Freedom is the right to tell what they do not want to hear. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Tired of the same repetitive government narratives? Then wave goodbye to the distractions and rhetoric of corporate media. For this is Anti-Media Radio.
But I want to get the language right. The big government is in trouble.
You're all a bunch of slaves! Bunch of slaves!
What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
What's your definition of media?
And now, here's your host, S.M. Gibson.
My name is S.M. Gibson. This is Anti-Media Radio. It is December the 29th, 2016. It is the last episode for us of the year. We'll be looking back on the insane year that it's been and also looking forward to what we have in store for 2017. It's been nuts. This has definitely been the year, I believe, that mainstream media has shown itself to be what it truly is. How anybody anywhere is still falling for it, is buying into their lies at this point, especially after the election, is beyond me. But yet we see the President of the United States coming out and is retaliating against, is it fake news? Is it real news? Who knows? Nobody will show us actual evidence. The evidence they provide today was pretty laughable and actually proved nothing, especially in terms of an election. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Barack Obama kicked out 35 Russian diplomats and put sanctions on Russia because of their interference in the U.S. election, of still which we've seen zero evidence. You want to trust the CIA, go right ahead. Look, seen people lie to us before, and if they had the evidence, I believe they'd show it. I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest host for the evening, Mr. Shannon Madden. Shannon, what is up?
Living the dream, Mr. Gibson. How are you?
I can't complain. Been sitting here going over the past year a little bit and everything that's going on in the news right now. Before we go over everything, your take on this whole Russia deal? It's just mind-blowing to me.
Well, first off, before I talk about Russia, I have still not received my propaganda check from Brother Putin. So I really don't know if I even want to bring them up. I just think we need to just completely skip over Russia, and we'll talk about some other stuff tonight because I ain't got my check.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to come. I think that was the year of fake news. Ironically, the Washington Post
and we got lumped into it. Anti-media, along with a lot of other very respectable alternative media outlets, got lumped into it, and that was completely intentional. Completely intentional. The powers that be are working even harder to make sure that the truth is suppressed. The First Amendment is completely tied up in everything that we're going to be talking about tonight in regards to the new NDAA that the current president of the United States, believe it or not, he's still president, Barack Obama, signed into play. And, of course, we'll break it down and you're like, well, what has this got anything to do with the First Amendment, and we'll go into it. It's pretty disturbing, particularly with the new. I don't know what we're going to get out of Trump. He definitely campaigned on a very fascist-leaning platform, so something like this would be a very powerful tool to someone who plans on running a fascist regime. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, again, we've talked about Trump in detail. Trump ran on every single platform you could run on. He changed the story so much. It was about getting votes, and I think that is, to me, still the most unnerving thing about Trump.
Well, but the fact that he won, though, still kind of highlights the fact that people wanted a.
The fact that he won, it was in direct relation to the fact that he was running against the most hated, scum, vile person that has ever ran for office. That's why
you're right.
He won.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. It is surprising that he didn't win the popular vote outright, but he won the way that he needed to become president.
Right. I mean, people, we can sit here and we can harp on all night long. Trump's this, Trump's that, and I get it. Look, who knows what Trump's going to do? But people overlook the fact of what we dodged and what was coming down the pipeline and the possibility of becoming president. Somebody that was openly just the most infamous liar. That, look, politicians are all known to lie, all of them. And she was known as a special kind of liar among liars. That's how much of a liar.
It was amazing because she lied without really lying. Every answer that she gave on something she was trying to dodge or evade was a very, or I don't recall that, or I don't remember, or, just completely, hey, it could have happened, but I don't remember anything like that happening. And something like that happening would be silly anyway. So let's talk about having a woman for a president. So, yeah.
She spoke like a lawyer. She spoke like a lawyer. And her and Barack Obama, wouldn't you love to see them actually debate each other? Because that'd be all it is. The whole night would be avoiding the question and speaking out of both sides of their mouths. Both of them. They're both.
Yeah, that's pretty much 2012. The debates in a nutshell. No two ways.
Well, here's the irony of that, real quick though. Is in 2008 when they debated each other.
2008. I'm sorry, 2008. Is
Hillary, I think, destroyed Obama in a debate. Now today, the Hillary we saw just run, I think he's way more polished now. He's way more experienced now, and I think he would destroy her in a debate today.
Oh yeah, he's smooth. He is a smooth talker.
He didn't in 2008. He was always good at reading the script, but he was never good at delivering off the cuff. And I think that's changed over the past 8 years for him. And she's just fallen apart.
Yeah, and to be fair, in 2008, he was Rookie of the Year, and she had been MVP for a long time in that regard in political circles.
Right, yeah.
He was fresh on the scene.
He had made his big speech at the 2004 convention, but other than that, he hadn't done a lot nationally, and that was his first real go at things, and he had the media helping him. I can't believe this is the election that people are just now noticing the media. They pushed Obama into office in 2008. Now, in fairness, he was running against John McCain. But the big one for me was 2012. We talked about a lot was Mitt Romney. The media pushed him through as the nominee. And he was clearly the most beatable nominee of all those idiots that ran. It's not like, oh, wow, we'd have had this, great president coming from the Republicans because they weren't there. But Romney got where he got because of the media. We've seen this over and over and over and over and over. And they tried the same thing this time. They're going to push Hillary through. That's just the way it's going to be. And it didn't happen. And so now everything's fake news because they were wrong. And the irony is they're always wrong. They're always a joke. I saw a headline last night, actually from January, from the Washington Post, which I think is the National Enquirer on steroids right now. Rip Bitcoin, it's time to move on. Bitcoin is, yeah.
Bitcoin's
to the freaking roof.
Right. It's over what, $200. It's gone up over $200 in the past month and a half. It's over
Yeah, it's
900.
like 900, no, almost probably 1,000. It was 900 and some change here earlier in the week. So yeah, no doubt it's still climbing.
And these are the people supposedly giving this information. This is a joke. And how are people still buying it? And it's clear they're not entirely, because they did go against the narrative and Trump did win, but that's where you get to the whole scary part of they're just going to blindly follow Trump, and then you get the exact same problem on the other side of the coin. I interrupted you, Kevin. Go ahead.
Oh no, I agree completely. It'll be a repeat. I got a feeling those of us and the audience that comes to the anti-media are going to find themselves probably again being the targets or the ones that will not refuse to go along to get along. With Barack Obama, it was if you've been lockstep, the Democrats, the anti-war Democrats that rest in peace, by the way, that used to exist, were lock in step. And this time, if you spoke out against the wars in Iraq, the wars in Syria, and so forth, then you were an isolationist. Now it's going to be interesting to see that now that Donald Trump is in office, who exactly the political enemies are. Is it going to be the people that are still speaking out against the wars? Is it the people that are speaking out against funding Syrian jihadists? What's it going to be this time? I think it'll be interesting nonetheless to see who exactly is pointed out to be the so-called troublemakers. Because he's not exactly a hardcore Republican, and of course Obama was not exactly a hardcore Democrat, depending on who you ask. So,
well, you're seeing right.
Here's three troublemakers right here, because we originally started this conversation with Russia, and that is Russia, Turkey, and Iran that have actually gone forth. And this story is up on the page at antimedia.org, theantimedia.org. That Russia and Turkey and Iran have brokered a Syrian ceasefire without the involvement of the U.S. government. Oh, no.
Stop the world.
We'll see if it can hold. It's a pretty fragile state right now in Syria.
Did you say, Shannon, that they brokered one or they broke one?
No, brokered. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've still got a little bit of red velvet cake stuck in my teeth.
Ooh, man.
Homemade, baby.
But yeah, for those who don't know, Russia and mainly Russia and Turkey, who have not exactly been the greatest of allies of recently, they've tried to mend some of the problems they've had, but we've just had the shooting in Turkey of a Russian ambassador. Not to mention the problems they've had going throughout the year with plane getting shot down, etc. But they brokered the deal in Syria. We'll see if it holds. Who knows if it will. Hopefully for the people of Syria, it does. It's just one of those situations that it is what it is, and the thing that you just want to avoid people getting hurt, getting killed. You want people to start rebuilding their lives in some way, especially when you look at Aleppo. Like, it looks tough. Like, it's going to be tough. I mean, I don't know how they're going to – that's not something you're going to do overnight. And they at least need to get to the point where they can start rebuilding and putting a life back together for themselves. I can't imagine what the people in Syria have gone through. And that's the thing, on both sides of what you're seeing, everybody wants to paint this, well, it's this way or it's that way. That's ludicrous. People forget that there's innocent lives that are the victims of geopolitical chess. And unfortunately, people don't accept the fact that a lot of that geopolitical chess was coming from the United States wanting to get Assad out of power. It doesn't make Assad a good guy. It didn't make Saddam Hussein a good guy. It didn't make Gaddafi a good guy. But were those people getting ousted from power, was that the best thing for those countries? Look at Libya, look at Iraq. Don't look like it. So if the United States got in a war today that hit inside the United States, would it be the people's fault inside the United States? No. Would it be the politicians' fault? Of course it would, because they're the ones antagonizing this stuff. Look at the way they're antagonizing Russia right now. They didn't get their way with the election. They didn't get Hillary Clinton in, who was openly advocating to go to war with Russia in Syria, which would have, I'm convinced, would have spread to something much grander and stupider.
Oh, yes.
How could it not have?
And so now it's like they're these petulant little children. Well, we're still going to, point the finger at them somehow, and yet not offer evidence for any of this crap they're talking about. And this flimsy evidence, I guess I put evidence in quotation marks, that they released today with these sanctions, it's not evidence of anything. It suggested that somebody in Russia got inside key members of a phishing scam inside the DNC. What does that have to do with rigging an election? It doesn't. And I don't know.
Well, speaking of evidence, this just came a couple days after Turkey had publicly claimed that they have physical evidence that the United States is directly supporting ISIS, something that we have talked about on the show quite a bit.
I was waiting for that to be brought up. In fact, I started bringing it up, but I think personally that is why, on the back of what we just saw in Turkey with the assassination of the ambassador, I think that Turkey is trying to make their move now, has decided, looked at the field and decided that, hey, we're going to opt to move a little closer to Russia. And now we're going to do some of the finger pointing. This, was what, a little bit less than a year, maybe right at a year after Putin himself called out Turkey for funding and for doing business with the oil trade with ISIS. So, it's a little bit of odd timing. And, it begs the question, why, knowing what Aragon is obviously guilty of in his administration and his government, why now? It just seems like a very interesting time for them to say, oh, the U.S. is funding ISIS. I mean, surely if that be the case, and I think a lot of us think that it is, either directly or indirectly, why now at this point?
Oh,
That's
well,
a good question.
I mean, it's very well. I mean, it seems to be pretty obvious, given the political climate over there now. Again, this is physical evidence, and I'm sure that they've had since day one a few receipts with United States name all over it.
Well, one thing you have to take into account here is one of the stories from 2016 that hasn't really been mentioned that much is definitely dealing with Erdogan and Turkey and the Hitler-style crackdown that he brought to Turkey. I mean, he just started laying people out. Just because, and I'm from the Tulsi Gabbard side of things and from everything that we've seen through the years, I think it's more likely than not that, yes, they have been funding groups that on the backside are terrorism groups. But just because Erdogan, of all people, says it, doesn't make it true. Because that guy, to me, his actions have dictated he's more of a psychopath than even Assad is.
Yeah. He's open, and at one point in time, Russia was very upset with Turkey and had evidence of them, actually footage of trucks, oil tankers being driven by terrorist groups, taking oil to back to the terrorist camp, as it were. So yeah, the whole situation, and it really is. Yeah, I think it was a brilliant illustration at the beginning of the show when you call it pretty much a political chess game. And it's very interesting how the pieces have shifted now, and where the United States either fits or, in this case, doesn't fit in.
Well, I think you're going to see once Trump take office, I think things are going to start shifting differently. I don't know how, Because right now you're seeing John Kerry and you're seeing Barack Obama, and they're all, their last valiant effort. The propaganda from that side is not going to stop once Trump's in office. If anything, it's going to ramp up. But they're not going to be in a position of authority any longer. Barack Obama's not going to have the pulpit of the Oval Office to get up and espouse all this, conspiracy theory about all these other countries and act like he's never dropped a bomb, when in fact, 8 countries, and I want to stress, because it's everywhere, 7 countries. He bombed the Philippines in 2012. And it wasn't like it was some, and here's the thing, it wasn't like it was some long drawn out campaign, but it still happened. With these other 7 countries, it's been long drawn out campaigns where just tons of people have died needlessly. But what are we talking about when, think about it like this. If Donald Trump comes in and for the next 4 years, he bombs 3 countries, and you talked about the anti-war left earlier, Kevin. Let's say they come back out of the woodwork. How dare you bomb these 3 countries? How dare you bomb these 3 countries? The really sad part about that is that in reality, he would be bombing 4 less countries than the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
How is that for Nobel Peace Prize? It shouldn't be a concern, though. I don't think many of us that pay attention to both sides and don't really subscribe to that whole left and right paradigm, I think many of us wouldn't be surprised at all.
No, and I don't know what we're going to see from a Trump administration whatsoever. There's people out there that think he's going to get in there on the 20th and he's just going to take the mask off and he's going to fight the globalists and blah 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 blah. Maybe that'll happen. But maybe it'll be business as usual. We genuinely don't know. We knew what we were going to get with Hillary Clinton. It never was going to happen. But if Bernie Sanders would have won, we know what was going to happen. At least I do. Nothing. He would have had his plan, and none of it would have ever passed. And it probably would have been the best choice of everybody that ran, because nothing would have happened for 4 years because he would have gotten none of it passed. Trump's the kind of person, I think he can get stuff passed. I think he can twist the right arms. And Hillary,
he's great at making deals. He's one of the best deal makers that ever lived.
Hey, so he says.
So he says.
And deal means, keep in mind, deal just means to come to an agreement. Even if some of these businessmen, even if they get screwed, if the American people get ultimately screwed, if it looks like it's a win on paper, by God, you better believe that Donald Trump's going to make sure he touts that as a win. And how often do the American people really win out on anything that a politician does? I dare say never. It's what a politician doesn't do that we retain a little bit of our God-given or our natural rights. It's when they act is when you can guarantee that something nefarious is going on, and the American people are going to get screwed. No lube.
Now, wait a minute now, Kev. What about all that pot out in Colorado? The politicians out in Colorado gave the people pot. I mean, come on, man. Politicians got to be good for something.
Right. And that's another sad thing too, man. You're right. And it is that a lot of people look at it like that they were gifted back something that originally belonged to them, that was a sovereign right that they were born with. It's a travesty in itself, to be honest with you. But the whole legal pot issue, man, we could get on that for days and days. Arkansas just saw earlier they had some permit process for their legalization. It's like $15,000 just to even ask for the permit to some degree. So yeah, that whole thing is it's a racket, but that's what goes on in a free country, right?
Well, isn't it? And I think probably we're going to see more places finally legalize that, but they're going to figure out a way to make every single penny they can in the process. And they'll feel like, well, they're just trying to figure out the best way to make money from it. Real quick, speaking of, your God-given rights in the government, what is any thoughts on Trump floating the idea of privatizing the VA?
Yes, but I'd like to hear your thoughts first.
I mean, it's not like it's ran great. It's not like we've heard many wonderful stories from the VA. I know that they're there for veterans, but you hear a bunch of tragic horror stories too.
Yeah, like them being left on lists to die and only being contacted after they passed away, or various guys that went off to war, fought for whatever it is they fought for. You may have your own opinions about that, but came back and then died in their bed with bed sores, and are ultimately ignored completely. And this is the same administration, the same organization that we trust to give up supposed free health care.
Right.
Your government.
I think the VA it's a tough one, because you can look at it from both sides as well. These people were sent and shot at and are now have something wrong with them because they were employed by the United States government. We can talk all night of why. But the fact of the matter is that it happened, and now there's some ailment. Obviously, the U.S. military is going to be funded by tax dollars from here to the end of time, until it's no longer in existence, I guess. So shouldn't their care be taken care of for the same way? But on the flip side, it's just like you said, Kevin. Look at how they've mismanaged it and wrecked it and ran it into the ground. And it's another, what do you do? It shouldn't be, the VA shouldn't be in the business of making money, because we look at how our healthcare system's working right now. Look at the drug companies and, Big Pharma and that whole debacle, where it is strictly about making money, and, people go without on both sides of it. They go without when the government's in charge. They go without when business is in charge.
Really quick, there's a great story up on Anti-Media right now about West Virginia's opioid addiction problem, and how Big Pharma has contributed to that, contributed heavily to the tune of about, $750 million pills sent to very rural areas. And, the rest is history. There's a lot of people that are not allowed to talk about it.
Well, I think a lot of people, just because the epidemic has been so bad in the past few years, and it seems like everybody knows somebody that's died of an OD in some way, shape, or form. People are waking up to why. I'm pretty sure. I mean, people have to know that this is all stemmed from Big Pharma getting people hooked on stuff, and they're transitioning over to heroin. But anyways, we're kind of moving past the situation with the VA. Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick before we moved on what you thought about that, of the privatization of it, and what you think the right call is on that. Is there a right call?
Is there a right call? No, it depends on which way you look at it. But I think obviously, like you said, the what's working now is what's in place is not working. I don't see the government being able to provide the answer. So at this point, I would say lean towards privatization. The whole healthcare system is a sham. This is only kind of, and to an extent, VA healthcare was what you can imagine a single payer system, which is what arguably Obamacare was kind of set up to eventually evolve into. So I would argue that Yeah, that the veterans are definitely losing out. The government's probably not the best solution to deal with it. So privatization, even in micro steps, and see how it turns out. But then again, this day and age, privatization seems to be a lot more cronyism than it is true privatization. So I'm a little bit, on that note, I'm a little bit hesitant as well.
And that's the scary thing about it. And yet we see, we sit here and talk about, well, we're a democracy, we're a republic, we're this, we're that. Look, we're an oligarchy. And we don't even see a healthcare industry that, even though it's privatized, they're so intertwined with government, they're so intertwined with the politicians and lobbyists and getting their way, that even though on the surface it appears like, well, they're not involved in government, they are, because they've hijacked the people they've needed to get what they wanted done. And because of that, I don't think you've seen true free market, because the politicians are working against the interests of the people on behalf of the corporations and their greed. That's at least my take on it. And I think you're going to have to get the hands of the government out of all this in every way, shape, or form for it to at least have a chance.
Agreed completely. And it's funny, even the national healthcare system, where is the argument to erase the state lines and the restrictions to buying insurance across state lines? That in itself would make healthcare extremely a lot more affordable for Americans in general. But what kind of healthcare, what kind of advances would we see in affordability to even your VA? Those that would be going to the VA, private insurance, if it was eligible, if it was allowed to be made more affordable, I think you would see in return VA or healthcare for veterans follow suit.
I think so. And of course, that's one thing you kind of got out of Trump during the election, is when asked about what would he do with healthcare, is one eloquent, sarcasm intended response was lines. We'd get rid of the lines. And that's pretty much the only thing he would say. But in fairness, if he did that, that would go, it's a step in the right direction. I'll say that. If Congress in Washington at least stopped there from being all these mini monopolies, and they're not really many, around the country. Look what happened with Microsoft and their monopoly they had, and the government came after their money, and yet we see it with insurance companies in every state in the United States are these monopolies on healthcare. And somehow Barack Obama convinced a whole bunch of idiots who thought, oh, we're going to all have affordable healthcare now, it's going to be great. But he made the trade-off was, it's going to be affordable because we're all forcing you to buy this product. And that's what's supposedly going to drive the cost down. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard. And for some reason, people bought it. They bought that hook, line, and sinker. Do I think Trump's going to come in and get rid of Obamacare? Probably not. I'm not holding my breath on that. He's already backed up pretty quick and says, oh, we'll just tweak it.
Republicans said for how many years that they were going to repeal it, and they weren't going to. They never were. There was all just lip service. So Trump can't do this on his own anyways, and it'd be real interesting that if we saw the Republicans now saying, oh yeah, we're going to repeal Obamacare. No, we're not going to repeal Obamacare. And they knew when they set this up that it was going to be literally almost impossible to actually repeal.
So wait, what part of you don't think Mitt Romney, the guy who gave him the model for Obamacare, was gonna overturn the thing that he helped give? Basically, he gave him the idea for it, and had Obamacare on a smaller level, and he was supposed to be the guy to overturn that. Like, what a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you forget that it was a liberal state. And that was that of course was his claim that he was doing this for a state, and that's much different, of course, than for the whole country. But the principle's there. It's just it's just a smaller playing field where you can literally almost forecast exactly what's going to happen verbatim. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's all lip service.
That's, what isn't like that? Shannon, what Shannon is not in our government that's not lip service? Can you tell me anything that's not?
Oh, man.
Give me a minute to think about that one. I know we'll have a good laugh out of it. Lip service in the government, Shannon. Lip service
the government. Lip service. I'm drawing a blank on that one, fellas. I really am. And again, it's just like Kevin pointed out about the VA. Here we're supposed to have this grand, system of healthcare set in place to, take care of the troops that we have sent off into some god awful situations, and this is supposed to be their reward. And some of them, a lot of them, these days are returning home missing limbs, serious mental and breathing issues. All sorts of situations, and problems that they've had being exposed to, Gulf War syndrome, which is pretty much radiation sickness, if you want to get down to it, from the depleted uranium in the weaponry. I mean, we put them in such awful situations. We bring them back home, and then they get put on a list. They get put in a line. They get stuck with red tape and bureaucracy, just like every other thing that government offers. There's all these grand and wonderful. Now, if you happen to be a prominent member of society, oh no, you definitely get the red carpet treatment. The United States government really is a Ponzi scheme. If you are able to somehow convince a lot of people to work under your banner and work for you, you're entitled to all sorts of tax breaks because you're giving to the right people and you're having dinners at the right places and so on and so forth. This system is not for us. I mean, it's just plain and simple. It's the truth. This system is not designed for us. It's designed for a specific good old boy network, and it starts off with a few people at the top, and then there's, a million or so middle managers, and then that just trickles down onto us, the people that are out there slugging it out day in and day out for these people.
I don't know if it's even fair to say this. It's not the system was designed for or against someone, but I do think it's fair to say that whatever system it is has been hijacked and rigged by the powers that be that make it.
And it is no longer for us.
Right.
It's not.
And it makes it always skew in their favor. But, when you're an oligarchy and you're run by a bunch of monopolies, that's what you get. I mean, from the bank bailouts to the health care, you always see things working out in favor of the people with all the money. That doesn't mean, though, that at the same time, I think the answer is just, let's just raise the minimum wage and blah, 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 blah. What you need to do is get the corporations and government out of people's way. Offer the hand up when they need it, but at the same time, you can't have people dependent on anything, especially the government. And of course, I get it. Well, what about this? There's an exception with anything you want.
What about the sick? What about the poor? What about my roads?
I get it.
What about the missiles and what about the bombs?
Well, look, if people want to have something fixed domestically in this country, the first thing they need to do is start petitioning and tell the powers that be to stop spending all this money on destruction overseas. But they haven't done it. They get worked up and want to stand in front of a McDonald's and ask for $15 an hour and don't know what they're asking for, why they're in that position to begin with, what a minimum wage is actually there to accomplish, and what it will do to the overall value of the dollar. Don't know, don't care. They're just, I want more money.
Lottery winners prove this all the time. You get, somebody who came up from a very, troubled economic background that suddenly wins the lottery, and then 3 years they're broke again. They go through more money than we could ever imagine.
All you need to do is watch a 30 for 30 marathon on ESPN on Sunday.
Yep.
And look at all these people that didn't have a bunch of money, then they had a ton of money, and then they lost it all.
MC Hammer, anyone?
The list goes on and on and on and on. But they don't, nobody wants to teach anybody anything in this country either, but whatever. And that's part of the problem. Everything's run off of this.
And that's a large part of the problem. The de-education of our youth coming up. In several generations, we're already getting to a point where kids can't even plant, a little house plant. They don't know how to cook themselves anymore. They don't know how to, turn a screw on a doorknob to keep it from jiggling or change a light bulb. That's sad.
Well, there you go. And what should we be? Should we be really surprised when a parent sends their children, and hey, I'm not knocking it. My parents sent me to public school too. That was the model for a lot of parents. But when you send your kids to a group and an organization that for 8 hours of the day, your child is just a number, when it's represented by the things that go on and the agendas pushed by an organization that, the federal government, and we've got standards being pushed by, like you said a minute ago, Mr. Gibson, in a country that is essentially an oligarchy, it should be no surprise that your kids are going to grow up to be workers and robots, if they're even, even if that's even something they're allowed to achieve in and of itself. We shouldn't be surprised, which is one of the reasons, if and when I do kids, I will do everything I can to have them in a good private school. Not that private school is the end-all, be-all, but it goes back to, I hear this argument for conservatives a lot of times that, the kids just, their parents just don't teach kids. Well, it's every different socioeconomical group that across the board, they're not getting the education that's driving this country forward. And it's going to keep going the way we're headed unless some stuff's got to give and got to change. And it's when parents quit relying on the government to teach their kids, I think, is one of the biggest steps.
Well, that's true. Well, that's beyond true. But I'm going to tell you what I think. Not only that is this phony, sensitive, pseudo-intellectualism that's running rampant in this country. And I know everything. I'm so smart. I have all the answers. And that person literally knows nothing. Oh, congratulations. You got a fancy college degree that you went into if you were so smart, why did you go into a whole bunch of debt for whatever you went into debt for? That's insane to begin with. And that's not to say education's not important. Of course, education is important, but it's this superiority kind of complex that people think they have. We just saw it with this idiot. I mean, this election showed us so much about this country. Everybody, for whatever you want to say about Trump and whatever you want to say about all the people that supported him, there was a group of people in this country that looked at those people and still do, and are like, we're smarter than you. We know everything. We're right. You're wrong. Period. The end. And
you're a big basket of deplorables.
Right. And it's ironic that these are the same people. It's like, well, we all have to, look out for this or look out for that. And at the same time, spit on people for liking a certain politician. Let me tell you something. If I didn't like people based on liking a politician that I didn't like, I wouldn't like anyone. Well, I guess I don't. So never mind.
You really don't. So.
Fair enough. But seriously, though, I mean, we're people at the end of the day. People get wrapped up in the whole propaganda of what we see, and they buy into these false narratives. They buy into these lies because they want to be They think it's I think this is the right way. Okay, I don't know if y'all have seen, there's a show on A&E right now that Leah Remini is doing about Scientology.
Ooh, this is a good one too. We've actually been binge watching this past couple days.
So you've seen it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Now, watching the show and them talking about being inside of Scientology and the mindset of being inside of it and thinking they would never lie to us. They're telling you all these statistics. They would never lie to us. You hear David Miscavige would do this. He would never do that. And you hear all these stories they say, and they go, that would never happen. None of this could ever happen. And it reminds me so much of what you see with media in the United States government. It's like they've been brainwashed by a cult. And no matter what facts you put in front of somebody, you get but they would never do that response. And I guess it's harder for people to admit to themselves that they believed something that wasn't true, and maybe what you believed in wasn't as wholesome as you thought it was, and maybe it's possible that you were taken advantage of on some level. But I don't know, the whole mindset of inside Scientology, the way they describe on that show, and the way people react about government reminded me so much of each other that it could just never be. They would never lie. That would never happen. I don't know if y'all. Go ahead.
I forget who it was, but I heard a quote, and I'll paraphrase it. But it was that man is handicapped when faced with a conspiracy so large that he can't possibly think that it exists. And basically, the author went on to explain that, the human mind puts these borders around itself, these perimeters, if you will, that it's not willing to entertain ideas that it knows. When somebody brings forth an idea, it knows even subconsciously that it needs to protect the mind. And some people are willing and are not willing and do not want to hear anything that is willing to shake their foundational beliefs. I can remember hearing about certain political ideas and just being, completely like, what do you mean? And so naively for me to, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a scientist, but can you imagine how naive and how stupid you have to be to tell somebody who is a scientist? Imagine somebody trying to come to tell you these ideas and that they know of, and that you're going to argue and tell them these things don't exist. But that's what happens. We'll argue and tell you that it could not happen, and we have no grounds for doing that. The only reason we're doing that is because our mind is telling ourselves to do what it takes to protect ourselves. And I think a lot of times that's exactly what happens is people refuse. They don't want to be awakened. Don't wake me up,
But they think they're awake. They think they're awake. Everybody, I think, probably does think that. But look at like some of the people that they interview on that show. Those aren't stupid people, but they were in it for so many years. They allowed themselves to believe something, and to admit that it's not what it truly is. To admit that is to admit everything in your life and everything you've done is a big lie, and it's a farce. And that's not an easy thing to do for people, and I understand that. But to some of the extremes people will go to try to hold the lie up in their head is pretty outrageous. Whether people know it or not, Snopes is no definitive anything for any reason whatsoever. But people sure do like to lean on that one for stuff that may or may not have happened. But Snopes said.
Damn Snopes. They weren't too bad until they started giving, wading into what they call the urban legends in the political realm. When they were true and falsing, whatever, so-called, the Slender Man. The Slender Man, shooting that stuff down, by all means. But when they started getting into wading in the political spectrum, they shot themselves in the foot completely.
I actually just Snopes that, Kevin, and you're incorrect. It says they're doing the exact right thing.
Oh, mostly false, mostly true, or mostly.
It says what you said was mostly false.
Fake news.
Yeah. Fake news, Kevin. You're spreading it.
I'm sorry. Find me $500,000, Germany. Is it 500,000? Was that the number that I saw bannered about Germany's threatening Facebook with their fake news that if they run it or they report it, post it, something to that degree?
Oh, yeah. Look, and we can go to the NDAA real quick. We have just set up, okay, you talked about this earlier at the show, Shannon, but I think for most people, the NDAA's indefinite detention, that was in, 2011 or 12? Forgive me for not having it off the top of my head the exact year.
National Defense Authorization. Yeah, John McCain really pushed for that. And I think you're talking about when Barack Obama claimed that he took that passage out that
well, they didn't. It's
named
still
America.
in there.
Right.
But so anyways, for most people, they hear NDAA and they automatically think indefinite detention. What the NDAA is actually, it's the National Defense Authorization Act, and for all the money that's going to be spent over the next upcoming year for military
$611 billion
purposes.
Good.
That's where the money comes from. So it's something they have to pass every year, and it's basically a spending bill. But inside of that, because it has to pass, they sneak all this nefarious stuff in there. That's where you get something like indefinite detention. And now, Shannon, why don't you tell people what they've snuck in this time? Basically, spoiler alert, the United States has its own Ministry of Truth now, 1984 style. And they're going to monitor or police your propaganda. The same people that spew the most propaganda, they want to amp up the propaganda, basically.
Well, here's the official terminology from the United States government. They're seeking a whole government approach without the bureaucratic restrictions to counter foreign disinformation and manipulation, which they believe would threaten the world's security and stability. There's that term again, safety. Anytime a politician utters the words safety or security or stability, you better perk your ears up because you're fixing to get screwed. And that's exactly what we're done. It's called the Countering Information Welfare Act of 2016. It was introduced by Senator Rob Portman. And it's basically just setting up what you just referred to as a Ministry of Truth. We've talked about it just a little bit on this show. And this is, again, in reaction to the quote unquote fake news that is, being touted by Russian propaganda. And again, anti-media is Russian propaganda in case you haven't are late to the conversation. Still hadn't got my check yet, but we're still going to be fighting the good fight.
It's clearly not. I have to let people know that you're being sarcastic because they believe.
I'm being my tongue is firmly in cheek. I'm being very sarcastic. I've never spoken to anybody from Russia. I don't even know how to speak Russian. So, but no, and that's exactly what under the banner, under the guise of what they're supposing to combat. In reaction to quote unquote Russia influencing the election, which they clearly did not. That's what we're dealing with, and yet again something that's just one little tiny little paragraph shoved all the way down at the bottom, so everybody will flip over it. Terror and freedom and safety and all. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and sign that off. That sounds great. $611 billion next year for defense. That's also another little thing that in the middle of the story that we really don't need to overlook. $611 billion for 1 year.
That's it. And unfortunately, if it's not here in this country, then it's most likely offense, and they just call it defense. And but I want to make sure people get the point of this, that the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act is now law. And it became law because it was snuck into the NDAA. Basically, what it has done is they've created their own entity inside government. First off, that entity exists. This bill is presuming that they don't already push out propaganda from the United States government. Like, that's how this comes across. And they're basically saying, well, if they're going to do it to us, then we're going to do it back to them. Like, they're not doing it. What does people think the CIA does? Like, sit around with the Rubik's Cube all day? Their job is to control the narrative. How people don't understand that a large majority of people in corporate mainstream media have ties in some way to another with the CIA. Like, again, that goes back to the whole cult thing. That's not true. They would never. Sorry, Operation Mockingbird. Look it up. The CIA doesn't do stuff and then just automatically stop one day. Oh, sorry about that. We're not going to do that anymore.
Oh, yeah. We'll back off on that one.
That's not the way the world works. Stop being so naive. But I guess being naive is comforting. For me, 2016 was the year that I could officially not believe anything I hear on corporate news anymore. I mean, seriously, like I'll watch it to see what they're saying, but not as an actual, I want to get the facts. I just want to know what narratives they're going with today. And even I'm now recently, especially since the election, I've got a hard time stomaching that. For you, Shannon, what was 2016 the year of for you? I mean, a lot's happened this year.
It was equal parts the shortest year and the longest year that I can remember. My own personal life had a great time, but as far as the political landscape, it was definitely easily the longest election year that I can remember in my history on Earth.
No, it seemed like it took 3 lifetimes, that we were never going to see the end of it.
And we still haven't.
No, we haven't. And who knows where it's going to go. Kevin, what about for you, 2016? What's the big takeaway for you from this year?
Shoot, man, narrowly avoided war with Russia so far. You know, Syria, Russia. We had, was that actually the beginning of 2016, end of 2015, where we had the troops saying they didn't go to sign up to serve in Syria to defend the Al Qaeda and ISIS. So yeah, all the wars. I think that was
terror.
Terror. So yeah, that's it, man. I think we're going to see more of it. Be an exciting year, that's for sure, coming up.
I definitely think it's going to be a very unpredictable year. I think it's probably going to be more unpredictable than even 2016, only because I think, again, all the Trump detractors, I think they're going to be wrong about everything they say. I think all the Trump supporters are all going to be wrong about everything they say. Like,
I just hope that we still get to do this show next year. That's all I got to say about that, because, yeah, the hammer's coming down, man. The hammer is coming down. It
truly, truly, truly is. I want to thank all the listeners that have stayed with us for this entire year. And you know, please stick with us for next year. We're going to keep doing our best to overcome the corporate narrative. For Kevin, for Shannon, I am SM Gibson, Anti-Media Radio. Have a happy new year. Anti-Media Radio out.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.